Harry and Meghan Markle walked away from the British royal family, believing they could build something louder, richer, freer, and maybe even more powerful than the institution they left behind. But according to royal biographer Tom Bower, that dazzling escape story has now collided with a brutal question. What happens when the royal connection that launched the brand starts losing its power? Their story, their brand, their version of events it was supposed to prove they never needed the monarchy standing behind them. Yet Tom Bower has spent years publicly arguing that the opposite picture is emerging, pointing toward expensive controversies, cooling celebrity relationships, shaky commercial momentum, and a royal family that simply kept moving while Harry and Meghan fought to remain impossible to ignore. And the first crack in this supposedly unstoppable California reinvention? The legal bills. Harry repeatedly marched into courtroom battles involving newspapers and security arrangements, surrounded by cameras despite once demanding distance from relentless press attention, and Tom Bower's assessment could hardly have been darker. Prince Harry is done. He claimed one defeat had tarnished Harry and suggested the enormous costs attached to years of lawyers, hearings, appeals, and courtroom warfare were becoming a crushing burden. Harry may have expected victory, but Tom Bower suggested the lawyers surrounding him had every reason to keep the battles rolling. Then came reports claiming longtime friend Elton John had been approached for financial help, feeding an even uglier narrative. The prince who left royal life demanding independence might now be discovering that independence comes with invoices. And Tom Bower pushed the warning further, saying Harry and Meghan had entered what he viewed as a serious struggle for survival. While Charles remained the figure major celebrities still wanted proximity to, Taylor Swift appearing alongside William and Catherine only sharpened that contrast. The courtroom strategy was meant to produce vindication. Instead, critics saw costs, questions, and another flashing warning light. Then, Hollywood entered the story, and this is where the fantasy really began to wobble. Harry and Meghan had left royal duties talking about privacy, pressure, and unwanted scrutiny, only to arrive in an industry built entirely around cameras, headlines, interviews, streaming numbers, and public fascination. Netflix and Spotify opened enormous doors, Montito became the glamorous new headquarters, and suddenly, Harry and Meghan were no longer merely former working royals. They were producers, podcasters, storytellers, celebrities, but celebrity attention is rented, not owned. Tom Bower argued that the wedding itself had already revealed the Hollywood ambition, claiming Meghan surrounded herself with famous people while preparing a return to celebrity culture. At the height of the Netflix series and Harry's book, the future looked almost absurdly bright. But Tom Bower says the story then became one of decline, desperation for money, and a frantic need for royal revalidation. Critics said Harry and Meghan had leaned too heavily on the same commodity, their grievances with royal life, and once interviews, documentaries, podcasts, and memoir revelations repeatedly mined that territory. Audiences inevitably began wondering what else they actually had to sell. Spotify disappeared. Projects stalled. The empire stopped looking invincible. Tom Bower went even further, arguing that Meghan had no meaningful income stream left, no major podcast, and no obvious next move. And then comes the contradiction that refuses to disappear: privacy. Harry and Meghan said they wanted peace and control, yet once America became home, personal history became content. Diana, William, Charles, therapy, family conflict subjects that once belonged behind palace walls suddenly became material for worldwide distribution. Tom Bower described the Netflix material and Harry's autobiography as potentially explosive for Charles, William, Kate, and Camilla, warning that King Charles faced the nightmare of containing what Tom Bower called a poisonous package. Money, fame, narrative control, the bargain looked irresistible. Until royal consequences supposedly entered the calculation. Suddenly there were claims Harry and Meghan wanted damaging material softened after the Queen's death, while Netflix supposedly had little incentive to erase the very drama audiences had been promised. Tom Bower characterized the arrangement as a pact with the devil, arguing that titles, children's status, and the Duke and Duchess of Sussex identities could become pressure points if relations with Charles deteriorated further. Meghan, he noted, could criticize the institution while still presenting herself through the Duchess of Sussex title. And while that contradiction grew louder, another question crept through the mansion gates: how expensive was this entire operation becoming? Security, staff, lawyers, publicity, travel, the Montecito property, and a luxury lifestyle never stopped demanding money simply because Hollywood enthusiasm cooled. Spotify was gone, Netflix no longer looked like an endless fountain, and Meghan's lifestyle venture was hardly guaranteed to transform instantly into a financial rescue machine. Tom Bauer mocked the jam business and painted an extraordinary picture of Harry and Meghan struggling to keep their operation relevant while dependable income supposedly weakened. The photos could remain glossy, the appearances could remain polished. But Tom Bauer's argument was that behind that carefully constructed California image, survival itself was becoming the real story. And just when that pressure looked dangerous enough, the next problem emerged. Every carefully managed move seemed capable of becoming another disaster. Cameras caught awkward moments, old recordings resurfaced, statements were questioned. During the Queen's funeral, William, Kate, Harry, and Meghan appeared publicly together while, according to Tom Bauer, damaging Netflix material involving Charles and William was already recorded. He compared it with Prince Philip's funeral and Harry's earlier comments concerning his father, arguing that the public reconciliation image concealed something much messier underneath. Then the legal controversy surrounding Meghan's statements and Scobie added yet another layer, with Tom Bauer insisting the contradictions were becoming impossible to ignore. One controversy was no longer ending before the next arrived. And then came Archwell. Harry and Meghan presented charity, humanitarian work, and global impact as central pieces of their post-royal identity, but the Colombia trip triggered uncomfortable questions about spending, private travel, publicity, fashion, and how much tangible support actually reached charitable causes. Tom Bauer described the trip as wrapped in mystery, questioned who funded the private jet, referenced the vice president and a Soros Foundation connection, and claimed only around $8,000 was ultimately left behind. Then he attacked Meghan's repeated outfit changes and fashion links, turning what was presented as humanitarian visibility into another accusation that commercial branding was somehow creeping into the charitable image. If Tom Bauer's interpretation is right, the problem was no longer one failed deal, one ugly headline, or one courtroom defeat. The pattern itself was becoming the scandal, and the next reasons only make that pattern darker. Then came the problem no amount of polished publicity could easily fix. People were simply becoming exhausted. Harry and Meghan had once possessed the strange ability to dominate headlines with almost anything, but outrage eventually turned into repetition, and repetition turned into indifference. Tom Bauer argued that their royal status was burning out fast because sensationalism had become the fuel keeping the machine alive. Every appearance needed to be bigger, every revelation sharper, every return to London more dramatic, because ordinary celebrity was no longer enough. Even Australia supposedly exposed the danger, with questions about whether events could still generate the same excitement, while fashion appeared to attract more attention than anything else. And that fading fascination led directly into something even more damaging: the controversy around Harry's own charity legacy. Centibel had been tied emotionally to Princess Diana, yet Tom Bauer claimed Harry had barely visited the charity's African work for years, while Meghan had little interest in building their new life around Africa. According to Tom Bauer, Chanduka became the figure willing to challenge Harry, and the relationship deteriorated badly. Tom Bauer accused Harry of sabotaging efforts to rebuild the charity financially, while another clash allegedly erupted after Meghan appeared at a Florida polo event, pushed Chanduka away from the prize presentation, and became part of what Tom Bauer described as an explosive dispute involving Sophie Chanduka. A charity connected to Diana's memory was suddenly surrounded by accusations, resentment, and questions about whether reputation had become more important than the mission itself. And that leads into the most uncomfortable contradiction of all. Harry apparently wants royal connection restored without offering the apology critics believe would be required. Oprah, Netflix, private accusations, family humiliation. Tom Bauer framed the entire situation as Harry and Meghan becoming victims of their own dishonesty while refusing interviews that might force them to answer the ugliest questions directly. Meanwhile, Meghan's image as a modern feminist also became ammunition, with Tom Bauer ridiculing the contradiction between celebrity empowerment and becoming internationally famous through marriage. No apology, no major walkback, yet royal forgiveness still seemed desirable. The monarchy, meanwhile, did not collapse without them. Tom Bauer called Harry and Meghan falling stars, arguing that William and Kate remained firmly inside the institution while the Sussex brand lost power. Harry, according to Tom Bauer, desperately needed reconciliation with the king and renewed royal validation, even choosing Birmingham in hopes his father might appear beside him. But the burned bridges were everywhere. Harry had written about Prince William, Kate, his father, Camilla Britton, and private family conflicts, then continued the criticism through Netflix, Apple, and public appearances while insisting his conscience remained clear. Tom Bauer described a Harry who wanted California freedom while repeatedly returning to Britain to preserve importance, all while continuing to undermine the royal family. And finally came Princess Diana. Harry's grief had always shaped his public story, but Tom Bower claimed something far stranger, that Harry told a source Meghan was in contact with Diana and that Diana supposedly approved of what they were doing. Princess Diana's memory was no longer simply inspiration. In this telling, it had become reassurance. Tom Bower questioned whether Diana could ever have wanted William treated this way, yet argued that Meghan had found the perfect emotional justification for Harry. And that is where this entire saga ends for now. Hollywood uncertainty, fractured relationships, charity warfare, palace silence, royal estrangement, and Princess Diana's memory hovering over everything. Tom Bower's verdict is savage, but the bigger question remains unanswered. If this really is the end of one chapter, what happens when Harry and Meghan Markle realize there may be no royal road back?